Up it, yeah. I just don't want anyone to be confused if they ever read an article about it or something. That's how it's going to be. So if I were shooting in this room at night, and the only thing lighting me up was these lights right here, what would it be? What? What was it?
Something in the 5,000s?
Okay, so 5,000 would be daylight.
Okay, I got it.
So this would be if it was at night, and the only thing lighting me up was these lights here.
Like 32.
Yeah, or even maybe 25 or 27, because it would be a really low temperature, right? It would be really yellow lights. But then the moment I walk outside and I'm shooting in the shade, what am I going to be at? 6, 7, yeah. I tell people I usually most often shoot between 5,500 and 6,500. If you're going to start anywhere, start there.
Yeah.
And then if you're like, oh, if it's too blue or too warm, then you can change it. All right?
Shooting you right now is 6,200.
6,200?
Yeah.
Why would that be, guys?
Is the sun behind you?
Because the sun's behind me, because I'm in the shade, basically. I am getting a little bit of light from these windows, but for the most part, I'm getting lit up by like the light bouncing around.
I'm
and these
shooting
lights
at
up above.
45, 50, and I like them.
It
It's
totally
different.
depends on, because, yeah, it totally, exactly.
Yeah.
Lenses change.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Lenses change. That's a warmer, that's a cooler lens than probably
Yeah.
for nighttime.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or whatever you like if you like a little warmer. And
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The biggest thing to think about, guys, is you can never screw it up. If you're shooting it raw, you can always change it later. But I'm telling you, the moment you start getting it where you're walking into a room and you're like, oh, and you adjust it real quick, or you shoot one shot and you adjust it real fast, it becomes like playing the piano. Now, I suck at playing the piano, playing the cello. It's just like playing the cello. I suck at playing the cello. But the moment you know kind of where to go when you're doing things, it's your fingers are like just going there and they're adjusting things automatically and doing it really quick. So like I said, it'll take you a couple weeks to get used to it, but I promise, stick with it and you'll find that your post-processing time is so much faster. I do so little of moving my white balance in Lightroom, and just that little going up and changing it, even if you're like, oh, that only takes a second or two, Trevor. A second or two, but let's say you're doing 3,000 photos, a month or more. That's a lot of seconds that you're throwing away. So keep that in mind, guys. And like I said, if you're not doing it, please hit me up. Please let me help you.
From an editing standpoint as well, if you set it, leave it until you change situations.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about that before.
Yeah. So what he's saying there is, if you're shooting and maybe you're not hitting it perfectly, but you're close. Maybe you're 800 off, 800 degrees off, and you're like, oh, I wish I had shot this a little bit cooler. Just leave it and shoot that set until, and then if you move into different light, you're going from sun to shade or whatever, then you can adjust it. But yeah, you don't want to keep changing it all the time and like, oh, I just missed it. Here's what I do, guys. If I'm shooting a wedding and I realize halfway through the wedding that, man, I'm kind of warm, I wish I would have shot a little bit cooler, I will adjust it and then I always shoot the ground. So when I'm in Lightroom and I see that, oh, I shot the ground, then I know immediately, okay, that was where I did something different. I changed something drastically. And so that's how I do it. But
you can do like batch editing.
yeah, exactly. And it's funny, I'll be shooting a couple and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I change it and I shoot the ground real quick and then go right back up to them. So, yep, but please, I would highly encourage you to shoot in Kelvin. I find that most people, once they start doing it, they're like, oh, I should have been doing this a long time ago. Right, Shannon?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Except my voice didn't go quite that high.
Well, it's my interesting
I'm
fact.
just kidding.
I'm just kidding. Guys, to differentiate yourself, what I was basically saying here, guys, is in fact, this is, what in the world is going on? It's so weird because it shows me the photos. Well, maybe it didn't. Let me just go down then. The differentiate, here it is. What I was saying here, guys, is those colors are so yellow.
It's still like the most beautiful photo.
Yeah.
Doesn't that drive you crazy though when you see your photos displayed somewhere and you're like,
Yeah.
so ugly.
Just a little bit different than your computer.
You guys mind if I change it really fast here? Look at this, color temperature. We're gonna kick down some blues because that is way too yellow. We're gonna bring some blues up, I mean. Yeah, right after we got finished talking about Kelvin, right? Whoops, that didn't work. Oh well. How do I get it back? I think the TV just shut down on me.
Turn it off.
I think it just turned off.
Just push the power button. I'm not being smart.
Alright. well, maybe I won't worry about the temperature color. But guys, what I wanted to show was that Uncle Bob is he's not gonna shoot macro photos. He's not gonna shoot rings. He's not gonna shoot the tilt shift stuff. He's not gonna shoot what I mentioned here, the kind of compression that we have. All those little things. And so when you differentiate yourself by doing that kind of stuff, I tell people all the time, my moneymaker lens, the lens that has got me more business than anything else, is my 100mm macro. And it was just simply because a year and a half ago, when I was still kind of building my business, I was posting photos of ring shots. And people are immediately like, oh, that is crazy. You know, on Facebook, people love ring shots because they can relate to them and they can kind of put themselves in it. And then also girls who have a serious boyfriend, they always like ring shots. So because it kind of tells their boyfriend like, hey, this is what I like. But that was my moneymaker lens. I made more money with that one lens, and then I loved it for portraits as well. It's a great portrait lens. It's not just a ring shot lens. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. Now guys, when I shoot family photos, I love stepping back about 60 feet from the family. And it sounds silly, but if I can do it, if there's room for me to do it, I love doing it. Why? Why would I like stepping back 60 feet, for example? You'd be surprised. I actually, when I step back, I zoom all the way in, and I use my 200, and I get really nice compression, and I get really nice depth of field behind them where it's out of focus. But why do I have to step back 60 feet to do that? Why can't I just do it up close? What's the difference? What's the difference between me shooting, like if I was shooting a family and Keith was the family, if I shot here as opposed to going back 40 or 60 feet? What's the difference?
You're more comfortable?
It's kind of weird actually, because I'm like, okay, get together! You know, I'm like yelling to him, right?
Looks like a
So they
totally
might,
different photo.
totally different photo, but what's the difference? Why would I shoot and stay here? Why not put my 50 on and shoot at 2.0, for example? Why do I want to put my 7200 on, step way back and use my 200 and zoom all the way in?
No one can stand in front of you.
What's that?
No one can stand in front of you.
No, I don't mind if family gets in. In fact, anyone who shot a wedding with me, they know that I usually tell family, yeah, step in and grab your photo. I really don't mind. Here's the reason I do it, although I can see how that would work. The reason I do it, guys, is if I'm shooting with my 200, okay, and in fact, I actually put it right here. If I'm 10 feet away, right, and I'm shooting with my 200, my depth of field on that photo is 1/10 of an inch. So if I'm shooting Keith right here and I zoom in on his eyes, I basically have a depth of field of like his eyes and his eyelashes, and you're going to start to see the fall off all immediately, right? So if Keith was, if he had his wife in front of him, he was doing the prom pose where he reached his arms behind or around, and I focused on Kay, is your wife's name, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if I focus on Kay, would Keith be in focus? He wouldn't, right? So if I was shooting Keith's family and his two kids were up in front and Kay and them were there and I was standing right here and I got my focus and I focused on the kids, would him and Kay be in focus? They wouldn't, right? But, like I put here, guys, if you step back 40 feet, which is not that much, it would literally be from about here to Stacy, okay? If I shot that, now my depth of field goes from 1/10 of an inch to 2 feet. At 2.8, 200 millimeter lens. If I step back 40 feet, it goes to 4 feet depth of field, okay? So that's why I'm stepping back. Now, what do I do that for? Is because I can zoom all the way in. I can get a really nice family photo with beautiful bokeh and compression behind them. It looks gorgeous, but I don't have to worry about missing or making somebody out of focus. Does that make sense? Now, if I just want a safe shot, I'm just going to walk up, be like 5.6, boom, hit it, I'm out, we're done. But if I have the time and yeah, right, and go, right? But if I can get that nice shot and I have the distance to do it, I'm going to always do that because I love that look. It's a beautiful, beautiful look. One time we did some family photos and everyone was behind them still. And so basically we had this gorgeous light right where we were, and I wasn't going to walk the family like a long distance to go find better light or anything like that. So I said, stay right there, guys. I stepped back about 40, 60 feet. I shot them. It was the bokeh was so beautiful you couldn't even see the people behind them. It was like so blurred and just perfect. You couldn't even see the little heads bobbing and everything behind them. So keep that in mind as well. I just want to throw that in there as something you can kind of use to differentiate yourself and create those really pretty, beautiful family photos. Guys, another thing that I know a lot of people struggle with is focus. And when I say focus, Chad's going to talk a little bit about like kind of like business side of things. But I even just find people struggling with just like you see them on the Facebook groups. My phone cameras are always out of focus. My Mark II sucks. It's always out of focus, right? I had the Mark II. I know it can be soft sometimes, but I had no problems focusing. A lot of times it's the user. I had one guy who asked me, he said, Trevor, can you just mentor me for a day and 8 hours and we just go out and shoot and do all kinds of stuff? And I was like, sure. He paid a fortune. I couldn't believe how much he was willing to pay for it. But when we went out, I found that it was because his focus, he didn't know how to focus right. He didn't know how to actually focus, use your cameras right. So guys, number one thing, back button focus. Anyone here, and again, I don't want you to raise your hand and sense like, oh my goodness, I'm the only one. But is there anyone here not using back button focus? Okay. Awesome. Have you guys tried it yet?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Hated
tried
it.
it.
Okay.
I think it's just I'm so used to the other
Exactly,
one,
exactly.
I was way too-
And have you guys tried it?
No.
Haven't tried it yet? Haven't tried it yet? Okay, I want to help you guys. I want you to try it. Okay? Again, I don't want you to take away from like getting some beautiful shots for your portfolio because that is huge. We want you guys to do that. But even if it's late tonight or something, I want you guys to give it a shot. My daughter shoots back button focus. My daughter's 12 years old.
What do you think?
She started. She started when she was 10 years old.
Wow.
She came to a wedding. She shot the whole thing back button focus. The reason I'm saying that is it's not hard. It's just like you said. It's getting used to it. It's
Yeah,
different.
And I would get way too nervous to do that away.
Yeah.
Why is it
Can you
better
give a
than-
quick
Okay.
description of?
Absolutely. So back button focus, what you're doing is right now on our camera, as it comes, default, is our shutter button, is our focus button, and our shooting button, right?
Yes.
So, Alicia, if I am shooting you, and I got you right here, and I focus, all right, let's just say I want to move you to the side though, because I don't want to shoot you right down the center. So if I focus and I move over here and I shoot, well once I've shot, now the next time I press that halfway down again, it's going to refocus, right? Now I could have maybe that dot over to the side and it would happen pretty instantaneous, pretty quick.
Yeah.
But what's nice about back button focus is you take the focus off that one button. That button now only becomes your shutter button. So if I come in here and I want to shoot, it's just, right? And I can change, I can do all kinds of stuff, but this button now is my focus button. So the back of my camera is my, so now I can basically take it and I can, I can adjust, I can shoot over here and I can keep shooting as long as you don't move and I don't move, my camera's not going to keep refocusing every time.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now another time I
Keep it
love,
down the whole time, right?
well, you don't have to. Nope. You just press it down until it gets focused, and then once it's in focus, you just shoot as much as you want. Now, where I really love it is when somebody's walking towards me, and I can just hold down my back button focus as long as you're on AI servo. Remember, you can't be on one shot for this, but when you're on AI servo mode, or in the Nikon, it's continuous or single shot, right? But on AI servo mode, then you basically now I can hold down back button focus and keep walking up on you and shooting the whole time, and it's going to refocus the whole time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's an amazing tool to be able to shoot just quicker and easier. You can compose your photos a lot easier with it. So I'd highly, highly encourage it, okay, if you're not using it. Guys, the other thing on focus is always look for contrast. That's one of the biggest things as well that I see. I'll see people, they'll try to focus on a bride and they'll focus like on her dress, and the dress is all white. And our cameras are like, how am I going to focus on that? Or they'll focus on a groom's suit and it's all black. So if I'm focusing on a groom, where would be the best place to focus? I love right here. This is my favorite spot. I actually will go here even more so than I do the eyes. And the reason is because I love the collar with the neck. There's always a dark, like a difference here. It's always like a black suit against a really, like a lighter skin. So if I can, that's where I tend to put my focus dot. It's somewhere right in here.
Even if it's someone like an African American?
Well, here's the funny thing. African Americans, what color suit do they wear to weddings? White, right? They always wear white. So you still have that contrast. If it's an African American, our cameras do a terrible job focusing on the eyes unless you're close. If I'm close and I can get the white of your eyes and the pupil, then it will do great. But a lot of times if you're shooting African American, it's even worse if you try to focus on the face because there's just no contrast there. With Caucasians or whatever, you'll see the difference between the eyelashes and the skin, so that helps. But if I'm stepped back and I'm shooting, let's say across the room over here, and I'm trying to focus on put my focus dot on their eye, a lot of times, depending on where you nail it, you might hit a cheek or something and there's no contrast, and it causes this kind of softness in your photo. If you really want to hit it and it's across the room, look for that area of the neck and the suit. And why do I go here as opposed to here?
Because there's still no contrast.
Well, okay, but what if I had a suit coat that was white and it came out here?
Because then
Depth of field.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a mess of your photo.
I'm looking for something that basically matches kind of the eyes. Here, it's different for every person. It could be out here if it's a big guy, right? I mean, it could be anywhere. So I'm always looking for something that just kind of matches. So that's why. So if I'm shooting across the room here, that's where I'm looking, is basically the neck to the collar.
So, but if you're up close, then still focus.
Then I go for
on
the eye.
Got
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Let's see, a couple more things on here. When I am shooting portraits, I'm always in one shot, but when I'm at, when I'm at receptions, I always shoot one shot as well. Why, if people are dancing, moving, having a good time, why am I shooting one shot mode as opposed to AI servo? Because AI servo is like sports and moving around, having a good time, right? But why would I shoot one shot at a reception? What do you guys think?
It's harder to focus when it's dark.
Yeah. Why is it hard to focus? Wait, which one? The single shot?
No.
Continuous, yeah.
Yeah.
Why is it hard to focus in continuous or AI servo?
Yeah.
Why is it hard?
I don't know why. I just know it is.
Okay. Anyone know?
Well, the motor is constantly moving.
Okay. There's a little trick though. And let me give you a tip. You're using a flash. At a reception, you have a flash on your camera, and you're in continuous or AI servo on the Canon. Why does our camera have such a hard time focusing?
Lack of contrast.
The what?
Lack of contrast. It's so dark.
No. Our cameras, if it's an AI servo or continuous and you're using a flash, our cameras will not send out that little red infrared light. You know that little light? It's called a focus assist light. It only sends it out when you're in single shot on the Nikon or one shot on the Canon.
I didn't know that.
So when you're
Because
shooting
it
receptions,
needs to be locked to send it out.
yeah, it has to. So basically, when you're shooting a reception, you put it on one shot or single shot on Nikon, and your flash will send out that little infrared focus assist light, and then your camera sees it, picks it up, and it allows you to focus. And then once it's focused, then you can shoot. So whenever you're in receptions, always shoot in one shot or single shot. Sorry, I think you guys get it.
We know.
Yep.
Speaking, since we're talking about focusing, when we were out on the beach the other night, Trevor was shooting a couple, and I was holding the flash one. It was super dark outside already.
Uh-huh.
How were you grabbing that focus of them, because there was no light on them at all?
One shot. I had one shot.
Has those little red like squares.
Yeah.
So that's where that came into play.
That was where that came in. Yep.
Okay.
I literally was using the focus assist on the flash. It can be pitch black, and my focus assist will shoot out that little red light, and somehow our cameras pick that up. Our eyes don't even see it. I mean, we might see like a little bit of red light on somebody, but our cameras see the contrast
That's
in the
why
red.
I've never been able to do that,
Yeah.
because I always.
Shoot on AI servo.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
But
So
I
as
always
long
Very cool.
shoot in one shot for everything. I don't know why. I love that.
Yeah.
But I still have problems focusing when it's dark.
With the flash on?
Let's play with it. Well, I bet
Is it with the flash on?
I bet we can. Well, let's play with it. We'll play with it late tonight or something.
Okay.
And
So it
bring
only
up
does
there.
that in one shot.
It only does it in one shot. It doesn't work in AI servo. Or when you're on AI focus, is basically it goes back and forth between one shot and continuous, depending on what the camera thinks you want. So I would
So
just
it's like
avoid
the
that all.
automatic.
That's like automatic, exactly. It's gonna try to choose for you. So I would just avoid that altogether.
Well, your
Um,
Mark 3 though does a better job focusing, right?
Which does?
You have Mark 3, right?
I do. I mean, it will focus a little bit better, like in the dark. But honestly, I never had the issues that people were having, even with the Mark II. People always talk, oh, I have this issue or that. I really never had the issues. Now, I will say, there was a time. Do you remember that when the couple was on the beach after sunset, Keith, and they were pitch black, and I was quite a ways away,
Yeah.
and my focus assist wasn't even getting to him. It was too far away.
Now, was your focus assist coming from the flash I was holding?
No, it's coming from mine.
Okay.
So in that situation, what I actually did was I looked down at their feet, and their feet where the sand was, the water was reflecting off, and there was just a little bit of contrast from bright to dark, where the sun was reflecting off the sand. So they were pitch black. My focus assist wasn't getting there. I went down to their feet. I focused on their feet where the sand was, and then I was able to go back up and shoot it. Now, had I been not using back button focus, what would have happened? It would have tried to refocus again, right? But because I was back button focused, I was able to focus down there, come back up, shoot it as many times as I want, and not have to worry about it. Now, guys, when I'm focusing on the feet and then I rotate back up, I've changed my depth to them. In other words, even though it wasn't much, I've changed from here going up to here. I've changed about 2 inches or so of my depth. If I were shooting during the day wide open, I would have thrown their eyelashes out of focus a little bit. But because I was like 30 feet away, my depth of field was literally about 6 feet or so, and it doesn't make a difference, right? Does that make sense? Now, one other little tip when I'm at receptions, if I'm having a hard time, Fran, like you were saying,
Yeah.
if I'm having a hard time actually focusing, what I'll do is I'll go find a candle, or I'll even go out into the bathroom or something where there's light, and I'll go and I'll take my camera and I'll focus, and then I'll flip it over to manual focus, right? And so now my camera's not going to refocus at all, and I do that because a lot of times I have this habit of hitting the back button focus button. I'll flip it over to manual, and now I know that distance right there, about 9 feet, is going to be every single shot. I'm just going to go around the reception and be like, cha-ching, cha-ching, right? And I'm going around and I'm shooting, I'm not refocusing at all. And usually when I do that, guys, I'm at like 5.6 to 8, f8 to 5.6. So I have a lot, like 2-3 feet. I hardly ever shoot receptions at really wide open aperture. Hardly ever.
That probably isn't important.
And because I find that it's just the dancing, they're having fun, and I'm just there capturing the moments. And so I will always, you know, if I'm really having a hard time, if it's really dark, and maybe I'm using off-camera flashes and I don't have my flash on here, so I don't have a focus assist. Maybe I have a pocket wizard instead. I can still, you know, I'm 9 feet, and I know I got about 3 feet depth of field difference. If you guys ever want something fun to do while you're on the toilet, go get the depth of field app or depth of field calculator on your phone. And I was just being straight with you. That's where I studied. I would grab the phone app, and you can get on iPhone or Android. It's free, or there's a bunch of different ones, but get a free one. And you can basically put in your camera, put in what lens you like to use, and then put in like how far apart you are from the subject. So you can say like, okay, I'm a Mark II, I'm using a 70 millimeter lens, I'm shooting at 2.8, and I'm 10 feet from the subject. And it will tell you what your depth of field is. So it'll say, oh, at that lens, on that camera, you got about 2 inches depth of field. And then you can go, okay, so what if I shoot back 30 feet? Or what if I shoot this lens instead? And you start to study your lenses, and you'll start to realize like, oh man, when I shoot receptions, this is what I need to start using more often so I can get 2 to 3 feet in focus. Okay?
What is yours called, the one you use?
I don't, hang on, let me see. I think it's depth of field calculator.
DOF calculator.
Yeah, DOF calculator, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm
yeah,
not on the
DOF
phone, so
calculator.
Can I download it now?
Yeah,
Do I
absolutely.
anyway?
For those who don't have a smartphone like that, it's online as well. You can go get it online.
This is
Depth of field calculator.
just that.
Okay, awesome. Oh, and guys, a couple other things. Reciprocal lens law. What is it? Reciprocal lens law. Anyone know what that is?
Looking that up.
That for the flash thing?
No.
You're good. 10:25.
When do I go
So
to?
like 10 more minutes.
Okay. Reciprocal lens law. Who can tell me? Somebody. Megan. Reciprocal lens law? No. All right. Reciprocal lens law, guys, is if I'm shooting with a 200 and I'm focused all the way into 200, I should not get my shutter speed lower than 1/200th of a second. I'm sure you guys have all heard this. You probably just didn't realize the name was reciprocal lens law. But it's reciprocal lens law is basically if I'm shooting with a 400 millimeter lens, you know those great big lenses they use for sports? I should not use a shutter speed lower than 1/400th of a second. If I'm shooting with a 50 millimeter lens, I can go down to 1/50th of a second, and I should be okay. If I'm shooting with a wide 24 millimeter lens, theory says I can go down to 1/24 or 1/30th of a second, but I probably wouldn't because we tend to move a lot when we're shooting. But that's reciprocal lens law. So when I put this lens on and I'm shooting with it and I'm moving around a lot, I know, hey, don't go down below 1/200th. Now nowadays we have these like stabilizers and awesome stuff on our lenses to help out, but still, I still keep that rule in mind.
Even if you're doing off-camera flash, do you still keep it?
No, off-camera flash is going to be different. And we're going to get into reception lighting.
Okay.
And I'll tell you guys how I do reception lighting and stuff. Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later. But no, if I'm doing off-camera flash, I can slow it down. In fact, I like to slow it down. But keep that in mind, guys. When you're out shooting, don't go beyond whatever lens you're using. If you're using a 85 millimeter, don't go down to 1/60th of a second, because you might
Why are
find.
you willing to push the ISO?
Ooh, good question. By the way, anyone know what ISO stands for? You remember this? I don't even know where I got this from, or maybe I made it up. I don't know. It's probably out there somewhere. But I love this analogy. ISO stands for International Standard Organization, but in reality, what it really means is ISO need more light. So when you're like, oh man, ISO need more light right now, that's where you push your ISO. To answer your question, I will take my ISO as high as I absolutely need to. after I've done my other things. So after my shutter speed's, kind of where I'm at. Like let's say I don't want to go below 1/200th, I'll do that. I'll bring my aperture down if I want, that really beautiful depth of field. And then at that point, if I need to push my ISO to get more light, I will definitely do it. Here's the reason why.
So you'll never break the reciprocal lens rule.
I will, but when I do it, I will like stabilize myself.
Got it.
So you'll see me, I'll like lean up against the wall, or I'll bring my elbows in really tight, and then I'll suck it in. I'll be like, and like try not to breathe. But it's something I just keep in mind to make sure I get that really sharp focus. Because if not, if I'm shooting at 1/60th of a second on a 200mm lens, and I move just a tiny bit when I'm shooting, that's what's going to throw that out of focus a little bit. So, and I really like to make sure that my images, that's the one thing we can't fix. We can fix exposure, we can fix white balance, we can't fix focus. They're coming out with programs these days that are going to help with that. But even so, even like let's say 2 years from now, Photoshop has a feature that says, oh, that picture's out of focus, we'll focus it for you. Do you really want to spend 3 minutes bringing that photo into focus, or Photoshop and trying to focus it every time? You might do that for like that epic killer shot. You're like, oh man, I got to fix this one. But there's no way you would do that. It would slow you down. So, guys, when I edit, I try not to spend more than a few seconds on every photo. Like literally, boop, I'm on. And I would be happy, we can bust out the photos from the workshop, and I'd be happy to edit them for you guys and show you at night how I do it.
You should
Yes,
totally,
please.
you should totally do that. I've watched
But-
it edit before. It's really cool.
Totes.
Yeah, y'all need to watch it.
Well, and I like it because then you guys get to see me naked. Because I
You
always
guys
edit
I
naked.
forgot to tell y'all that.
Yeah. No, when I say see me naked, in other words, I put my photos up there and you guys can see them like, hey, wow. I think it's awesome. Chad, you've done some editing for people. I mean, Christina's an amazing shooter. I know you do editing for her. But isn't it fun to see like, wow, photographers aren't perfect. Like they can actually have like crappy photos sometimes. I think it's fun to see that. And I think if you ever get a chance, like work for like a shoot.edit or photographer's edit or something like that and edit other photographers' photos, some amazing photographers. Marcus Bell out in Australia, he never edits his own stuff. Jasmine, she sends everything to photographers edit and they do it all for her. You guys would be amazed at how often like you see other people's work and then you look at your stuff out of the camera and you're like, I suck. But in reality, your photos out of the camera were probably better than some of these people that you look up to. So, so I'm happy to show, like, hey, this is me sucking right here, guys. So I'd be happy to show you guys.
Guys, let's do that.
Okay, let's do this. Let's stop there for now, and I'm gonna turn the time over to